What's the good word, y'all? DKB here. So we have our Eagles matchup tonight. Finally, our first time seeing not just our rookies, but our team from the previous year as well hit the field against another team. Keep in mind, we're going to have to take these performances with a grain of salt. There's going to be a lot of vanilla offense, vanilla defense going on, but we will have players that are trying to make the rosters, essentially playing at as close to full speed as they can get. With that comes some very interesting storylines, though, that we need to be aware of. So for starters, for us, is going to be the most exciting topic, rookies. Our draft class was phenomenal. You hear the headlines pretty consistently. We may have potentially gotten the top player at 4 different positions for us, which is exciting. So if we kick it off, we have rookie running back Breece Hall. One of his highlights coming out of college is that he ended his career on a 24 touchdown streak. Basically 1 touchdown at least per game for the last 24 games of his career. It's phenomenal. It'll be interesting to see if essentially he can keep that up. Otherwise, there's not a lot of other things to question. He's been durable. We've seen the explosive plays. We've seen that he may be even a better receiver than he was getting credit for coming out of college. The only other thing would potentially see how he handles pass block protection. But other than that, we're just looking for some exciting football coming out of the running back room between him and Michael Carter. And then we'll kind of see what else happens with the players behind them, of course. But Breece Hall is going to be the highlight in game 1. Looking at the wide receiver room, for this game specifically, we basically have to tune in to Denzel Mims versus these undrafted free agents, and of course Jeff Smith. Denzel Mims, and I've seen a tweet from someone, I want to say it was Ralph, maybe. I can't recall specifically, but basically it said expect between Mike White and Denzel Mims, who have both been running the 13 reps consistently, about 10 targets to Denzel Mims, which may be not too far from accurate. If Denzel Mims can get the lion's shares of targets when he does hit the field, does he take better advantage than what Jeff Smith can do with the backups in the second string, or what these undrafted free agents may be able to provide, which they've been a little bit more consistent with the praise that they've gotten, whereas Denzel Mims has had 2 very strong days, and then the other days you don't really hear much, or there have been concerns about drops coming up once again. Otherwise, when we look at the tight end room, Tyler Conklin and Zach Wilson, this chemistry, it seems like it's been blooming, and has been definitely an underrated blessing for us, because we still expect CJ to be very productive in this offense. So Ken in the early, they're predicted to get 1 or 2 series to go out there and see what they can do. Do we see this connection often, or do we at least see some of the big gains, or when we get into the red zone? If we get into the red zone, that connection that's shown its presence during training camp so far. I'll be more interested to see how often Jeremy Rucker is able to find his way onto the field as well. But again, in terms of highlights, Tyler Conklin should be the guy to keep your eye on there here. And when we look at the offensive line, keep in mind George Fant is still working his way back. Connor McDermott has the ankle injury. Dwayne Brown won't be officially playing in this game just yet. Announcements still need to be made. Cap space still needs to be moved for the contract. So we're most likely looking at Chuma Edoga and Max Mitchell. I would expect to see Max Mitchell at right tackle. That's kind of the break-in period to determine, what qualities does this player have that may be able to move over to the left side, if people don't automatically make that assumption about the player coming out of the draft. We know we had a plan for Max Mitchell, as Robert Saleh mentioned, for all of our rookies. So when he hits the field, and keep in mind, he'll probably see a huge duration of this game, can he make an impact right away? At the very least, not be a liability. While he won't have to assume a starting role anymore, maybe he can push for some early snaps in the season. Other than that, when we flip to the defense, as far as the defensive line, Jermaine Johnson, obviously we want to keep our eye on. He's been making a lot of plays more recently in practice, specifically in the pass rushing department. Nobody is questioning his run defense, and we've heard multiple times that he's ahead of the ball game when compared to other rookies that have been first-round picks for him. So I'm specifically just looking for the defensive line as a whole throughout the entirety of the game, because it's our deepest position and one of the cruxes of this Robert Saleh defense. Can we get effective pressure consistently throughout the entirety of the game? I don't even necessarily care if we don't have, 7 sacks by the end of the fourth quarter. Can we impact the the passing lanes? Can we force early throws, errant throws? I want to see those things pretty consistently. This isn't one of the positions where I necessarily want to hear, we're working on it, we'll need to figure it out. It needs to happen now because we need to demonstrate this for, some respectable level of confidence heading into the season that we are getting things turned around quickly here. In the linebacker room, I definitely want to look at Quincy and Quan Alexander because they've already mentioned their aspirations. Pro Bowl for Quincy. Quan has mentioned going back to, or at least going to All Pro for this season. Keep in mind, he had that huge contract that he signed previously. So, he wants to go ahead and reset his value during next free agency. Most likely won't happen with us unless you expect him to take over the CJ Mosley role. But can we see them dominate next to CJ Mosley? Again, probably we'll only see 1 or 2 series for all 3 of those players, CJ, Quan, and Quincy. I expect most of the rest of the work from second to fourth quarter to be up to Hamza, Jamien Sherwood, and then players like Del'Shawn Phillips, see what Kai Nakua brings. But I do want to see some kind of early impact, specifically in terms of pass coverage, because that was our weakest point of emphasis. But we will see how well they do with attacking some of these run lanes as well, because we know people are still a little bit deterred by if we'll get run all over during the course of the season. And the Eagles had a fantastic rushing offense last season, and they've only tried to make improvements to that backfield as well as the offensive line. So we should have our hands full and get a pretty good indicator early on how that'll work out for us. And then in the cornerback room, Ahmad Sauce Gardner is the guy we all want to see. Maybe he can get his first interception of his New York Jets tenure so far. Hasn't captured one in practice, but we've seen all of the traits. He's got multiple pass breakups, so it's not necessarily a concern. But the same thing I want to see out of him is what I want to see out of the rest of the cornerback room, which is impact plays. We need turnovers. If we can get off on third downs due to their coverage, fantastic. But I really do want to see more interceptions out there because we only had 2 from our cornerback group last year, and those both came from Brandon Echols, who showed an ability to recognize certain routes and then make the jump on it with his athleticism. So we know that we should have strong man coverage. We know we have the guys that should excel in zone as well when necessary, but can we force the turnovers to get Zach Wilson in this offense more opportunities? And then finally, the safety battle. I would say, as I mentioned previously, I think LaMarcus Joyner, Jordan Whitehead, and Jason Pinnock are comfortably penciled in as making the roster. We want to see if there's any separation between Elijah Riley, Will Parks, and then Ashton Davis. And at the very least, Ashton Davis should be able to make a case that he could be a decent backup, worst case scenario, and then maybe we can dangle him as trade bait. It would suck to see it happen, but there's this feeling that a lot of these players from the 2020 draft class, which was JD's first, Mekhi Becton going down, potentially having, seeing his career arc trend closer to being out of the league rather than being a long-term starter, future Hall of Fame NFL legend. Unfortunately, and strictly due to injury, Denzel Mims potentially on the trade bubble, Ashton Davis potentially not going to make the roster. And then, we've seen the other unfortunate injuries. So that whole draft class has pretty much dwindled down to a few key players that we may not even be able to keep around this season, let alone see next year. So either way, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What are you excited about with this Eagles game? I know in the last poll I did, a lot of us are more excited to see the cornerback group than anything else. But I'm looking forward to checking out the comments, and I will see you guys again. Peace.